my background was ex-seagoing engineer, came ashore 2003. Worked on bulk carriers, oil tankers, car carriers, gas tankers. That was essentially my background. I was introduced to super yachts in 2012. And since that time, I've worked for a couple of different companies, worked out in the Middle East, and here in the UK. Our office here is based in Gateshead. That's where we head up the operations for the fleet. We've also got a super yacht shop in Jesmond. I don't know if any of you go into Newcastle at all, but if you drive along Osborne Road, you'll see Big West Nautical, and that's chartering and brokerage is one of our offices there. Okay, yeah, in 2021, I also founded Marine Insights, was sort of tech solution for the shipping industry. This is remote monitoring, trending, AI, machine learning of data, and all of that sort of thing. And I'll go into that a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, so West Nautical Management Services, it's sort of divided into two, really. And the reason it's divided into two is for the brokerage and charter and the sales side of things, we try and keep that separate from yacht management to avoid any conflicts of interest that potentially can come up. And they have come up recently. We had a tender, custody tender. And basically it sank 3 days after we purchased it for the owner. The potential design faults, it's all going through the courts at the moment. Obviously, as managers, we're defending the owner like mad. We're like right behind the owner. Fortunately, West Nautical, they sold them the tender. Yeah, so you can see why there's a little bit of a conflict there. And West Nautical have a dealership arrangement with Custody for their tenders. So yeah, it's interesting. We pretty much cover the 360 of super yacht services. The only service we don't do at the moment is purchasing, but that's in the process of being developed, and hopefully in the next few months there'll be some announcements in the industry about our new purchasing arm. But yeah, you can see, again, we'll talk a little bit about yacht management and how that works compared to ship management a little bit further in. So this is our broad range of offices. So there's us up in Gateshead. We got the super yacht shop there in Newcastle, offices in London, Antibes, Palma, Limassol, Dubai. Most of these other offices are generally for chartering. Other than La Spezia, Italy, that's our head for projects. So most of our new build projects are sort of based in and around sort of northern Italy. So we've got a base of project engineers who are out there. Okay, and then just a final one on West Nautical Management Services. This is the way our management is laid out. And the reason I wanted to show you this slide is further into the presentation, we'll talk about how ship management differs from yacht management and how the two have got similarities. Big important parts of our business, other than the bit I do, which is the technical, is finance, yacht accountants, absolutely massive part of the yacht business because they're managing all the owner's money. So we have a big accounts department, which is probably where one of the differences between that and ship management. Okay, so the idea is just to take you through a little bit of a journey through super yachts and development and where they came from. Now, originally, yacht came from the Dutch yacht from the 16th century. Basically, these yachts were developed to chase pirates and vagabonds and anybody else up and down the coast. And these boats were about 40 foot long. Over time, as time passed on, wealthy people sort of looked at these yachts and went, this looks good fun, these are fast, small, nice machines to play around with. And then the story develops. So what happened from there is we got from small 40-foot yachts to the 18th century to the 19th century. People started realizing, oh, we can put a little house on here, and we can actually spend a bit of time, spend overnight on this yacht, right up to the present day. And that's where we are with the industry now. So this is kind of the background of it. So we've got the Dutch to blame for this. Okay, types of super yacht. Now, we've got a lot of different types in the industry. It's not just all sort of this over here, production yacht, is probably the one you're most familiar with. We have support explorer yachts. This one here is actually Game Changer. It's a boat we used to manage. That had helicopters, submarines. It had about 6 tenders on it. It had a lot of different toys, and that was actually chartered out to some pretty famous owners of very large yachts, and they would just use this for their helicopter. They would come on and off and go between their yacht and the supply yacht. Also for refueling and all the other things as well, it was fully set up to work very independently. Catamarans. Catamarans, I don't know if anybody's sailed on catamarans at all. They're pretty uncomfortable things to ride on at sea. So if you get an opportunity to have a go on a catamaran across the Atlantic, really think about it before you do it, because they've got a horrible motion. Semi-production, custom yachts. Generally, these custom yachts, they're sort of fed ships, northwestern European yards, where you'll physically start with nothing, then you'll get naval architects involved. You'll start doing the drawings, everything from nothing. Whereas semi-production and production yachts, that's their yachts. That's their 40-meter yachts. Sunseekers, San Lorenzos are probably semi-production, and then you've got sailing yachts as well. Again, they're very, very specialized, and they amass more about, say, maybe it's about 10% of the industry is sailing yachts compared to the rest. Okay, so the big question, who owns yachts? Now, on the list, we've got a couple of millionaires that own yachts, Rafael Nadal, Tiger Woods, but generally big super yachts are the property of billionaires. Billionaires tend to own yachts, millionaires tend to charter yachts, and that's just simply the cost of running them. So 40-meter yacht, you're probably looking about, depending on how it's run, they average about 3 million a year, between 2 and 3 million. There's the gentleman at the back can correct me if I got that wrong. Right, okay, yeah. And of course, as saying that the bigger the yacht goes, then obviously the expenses and the cost of running that yacht goes up exponentially. What I'll do is I just want to show you a brief video. So anybody who hasn't been involved with super yachts before, just to get a flavour of the idea of sort of how they work. Now, next thing I'll probably need some help with is getting the video up. Okay, so this is Nero. This is a yacht we used to manage back in 2012. Apologies, we've got no sound with it.
Is it a custom built yacht or a...
Yeah, so okay, so basically this yacht was built in China. It was the first super yacht of this sort of size and luxury to come out of China. We got involved with it in 2012 when it had been repossessed by the banks. So these yachts, you might be a billionaire, or you might have been a billionaire, but these yachts have a tendency to make billionaires and millionaires because they cost an absolute fortune to run. The dream selling department, the promising department, create these videos because they want to charter the yachts. They want to sell them. They want to bring out this this exuberance, this luxury, this amazing experience that you're going to have. And even millionaires, they've got such a choice of yachts, that they all have to spend a lot of money just advertising their own product. This video alone would have cost around about 80,000 euros to make at the time. This is quite an old video. Now, because they wouldn't use helicopters at the time, now with drones, you could probably do a video very, very similar to this, maybe in better quality for about 15, 20,000 if you've got a decent videographer. But it's an interesting video, and out of all the videos that I've seen online, this was the one that I was a little bit sort of surprised at in my own way, in my head, because they've got a big dining room table on the aft end of that boat. Huge. You couldn't sit there. Literally, you could not sit at that dining table because the generators were underneath. Okay. Now the generators, a Fed ship, you'd have an amazing experience sitting at that dining table on a Fed ship. On a Chinese ship, they kind of didn't quite get it. So they had open generators, not generators and sound boxes, but a general at the back will know about. And basically, if you didn't vibrate to death, the exhaust and everything that would have come out the sides would have swamped you and probably died of carbon monoxide. But the video looked amazing. So sorry, I just wanted to show you guys. I'm sure since that time, just to make clear, this was a few years ago, and I'm sure they fixed that problem. I hope they have. Okay. Right. So that one is it. Okay. I've lost me. Lost my notes now. I wish I just could be able to do this on my laptop. Actually, got there you go. Ah, right. Okay. Okay. So my iconic yachts. There's about 15,000 super yachts out there at the moment. 15,000. I mean, if you compare that to the number of ships out there, well, about 80,000, 70,000 ships or something, it's actually a bigger proportion of the marine industry than people realize. You're talking about something like 40,000 crew. That's just the sea part of the industry. Now you've got all of the yards. You've got all the yards. You've got the engine makers. You've got all of the motor maker companies. All these different companies. You've got refit yards. You've got management companies like ourselves. You've got paint companies, paint contractors. The business is absolutely massive. And does it get enough exposure? I'm not really sure it does for the right reasons. I mean, everyone's seen Below Deck, right? And actually, that's not. I mean, Below Deck, right, as a program to get crew and just raise the profile of industry, it's actually not bad. And parts of it are actually quite true. The chief steward having a row with the chef in the galley, yeah, that happens. The stress, chartering, it's a big stress business, but it's a business, and it's a big business. Okay, sorry, I digress. So Margot Rose, okay, I think she's 1986. She was probably the first expedition yacht. Okay, designs for expedition yachts were pretty much taken on the back of Margot Rose. Talitha. Again, Talitha is a boat I used to be involved with back in 2012. An amazing, amazing yacht. The family, she's owned by the Getty family. She was built in the 1930s in Germany. After Pearl Harbor, she was converted into a gunboat. She survived the World War and then was converted back into a super yacht. And as I say, she's now owned by the Gettys, and she's been owned by the Gettys for about 30 years. One of the funnels is completely fake. It's the forward funnel. It's just full of IT equipment, satellites, and all the other stuff that you need nowadays on a luxury super yacht. In the interior, I've still got NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, that I still can't talk about the interior too much. But I'll say it's the history on the inside of the boat, letters and pictures, and absolutely incredible. Incredible. I feel very blessed that I've actually spent time on that boat. Okay, moving down. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to have to click like this. The Cedar C2. Okay. The owner originally wanted a 40-meter boat. And he said, right, okay, you can have a 40-meter boat. It'll take you 3 years to build it. Just 3 years for a 40-meter boat. He says, tell you what, he says, I'll go 60 meters. So at that time, 60 meters was absolutely ginormous. This was again 1986, 87, was ginormous for a boat of that size. And luxury inside it, I'm having to read this out because I've forgotten. It had an underwater observation tower. So underwater, so you could see underwater. It had a 30-seat dining table. It had a cinema. It had a pool. It had slides. It had a lot of things that are actually just becoming more and more common in this century. At that time, it was actually quite a boat. Quite a boat. Lady Moura. Where's Lady Moura? Where's she gone? She was the first yacht to have an indoor swimming pool. There you go. No. Optimum luxury. You're surrounded by sea. You have an indoor swimming pool. Eco. Now, Eco is an interesting one. Eco. Now, she was 1991. Now, Eco, bizarrely, I don't know why they called her Eco, because she had 2 massive water jets. She used so much fuel. They used to have another fuel tanker actually sail around with it because they physically couldn't get enough fuel through her because she consumed that much in the engines. But they called her Eco. It's a bit, it was a bit of a strange one, but there you go. Catamaran, just very briefly, Catamaran was an interesting one because this was the first yacht, it's an Amels, Dutch built, to have half decks. And the reason they created half decks was the Dutch were pretty clever people. They realized that they had half decks. Then, first of all, for the guests, they didn't have as far to walk down at each set, you know, the women with their nice dresses and everything like that. But more importantly than that, it actually gave the crew more room. So it gave the crew more head height and more space to actually fit more equipment in and be more self-sufficient. It was actually quite a clever design for the time. And a lot of new boat designs still work off this principle now. So it's kind of an interesting design. That's why I threw that one in there. Coral Island. Now, she's kind of unusual because where's she going? Yes, Coral Island. There were so many strict NDAs, non-disclosure agreements over that boat. Even though it was built in 1991, nobody knew what the interior looked like. Nobody. It was owned private, and it was only 2017 when the new owner bought it. They started splashing the pictures of the interior everywhere. Right, all the way through that time, the interior was mystery. When it was finally shown, it was pretty. I don't know why all the fuss was about. Okay, Limitless, 1997. Diesel electric. Now, diesel electric in kind of offshore terms is kind of old hat now. We've had it for years and years. But all of a sudden, a yacht with diesel electric, it was like, wow, this is, I'm a forward-thinking owner. There haven't been many more diesel electric boats since that time, and it's kind of strange, and it's part of the yacht industry. I find difficultly getting my head around. You'd think that it'd be a forefront of technology, and that have all of this really, really high-tech gear on board. You'd be surprised. Most are very, very kind of dated. If you've been on offshore vessels or very, very modern vessels, the systems are quite dated on board. And it's because owners buy these for themselves and they're not interested in efficiency. They want something that they know works. So it absolutely terrifies them to think about putting pods, having DC systems, all of these things on board. And that's the reason that they are the way they are. And they'd rather spend the money on the interior and their pools and their AV and IT and all of these sorts of things than spend money on a high-tech system in the engine room when you've got perfectly good engineers. Sorry, I'll keep picking on you. Sorry. That can fix everything for them anyway. So yeah, it's a strange one. It's a strange one, but there you go. Briefly, Scat. Yeah, bit of an odd one, still an odd one. You see that floating around, it's Mediterranean. Yeah, very militaristic feel to her, look and everything else. I don't think it ever really took on. Brave owner, I gotta say. Octopus. Now, if there's ever a zombie apocalypse, you'll be absolutely smashed fine on her. She's literally got everything. She's she's very well supplied. She's got a floatable garage. It's 2 level, so you get 2 big tenders in there. It's ice class, so it can go anywhere in the world. It's got an underwater observation room, ROVs, video editing suites, 3 galleys, multiple lifts, massive fridges. Yeah, pretty impressive boat. And a couple of sailing yachts here. Royal Houseman, Tina, lovely boat. She's changed hands a few times. I think she was in Monaco last year. We're talking about selling her again. And of course Maltese Falcon, which is probably one of the most iconic sailing yachts in the world. It's got rotating masts. It was built in Turkey, but the Turkish were absolutely terrified of building the upper parts of the rigging and all that sort of stuff. So they got a British engineering team in to physically do all of the top deck and all the sail, all the rigging, all the top end of it, because the Turks did not want to run the risk of making a mess of the automation and everything with that one. But it's a beautiful boat, that. It stands out. And then Alfa Nero. So again, Alfa Nero is another one boat I was involved with heavily back a few years ago. Of course, anybody reads the news knows that there's big metal chains around that in Antigua at the moment. She's been under arrest. They thought they'd sold her, and then the family took the buyers to court and took the Antiguan government to court. Basically said, you're not having her. So she's still in chains, sat in Antigua. The swimming pool is amazing. It's also a heli deck. And it was a horrible, horrible nightmare for me. I had sleepless nights over that heli deck because the hydraulic rams that pulled it up and down, it had a rubber seal around the side. And every time they inflated the seal, black marks were up and down the side of the pool. And I would get calls. Swimming pool's dirty again. Swimming pool's dirty. And I'm like, oh, God. So we did everything. And in the end, what we found worked was we actually wrapped it. So we had beautiful mosaic tiles. We changed the tiles to ceramic slippy tiles and we ended up, the one thing that worked was wrapping it. And basically the rubber then just did not mark the sides. Well, that took a lot of calls, a lot of late nights and all sorts of stuff. And sometimes the solution is easiest solution. Yeah, Alpha Nero. And the final, last but not least, Moyo A. Not a favorite of mine. I don't particularly like it. I don't like the design, but I'm sure you've all seen that in the press and in the news and everything else. Another very sort of high-profile Russian owner had that. Apparently, I've got a friend who was chief engineer on there. Super efficient, most efficient boat he's ever been on, and that was purely just down to the whole design. Kind of interesting. Okay, so that's iconic super yachts. Right, so away from the promising department, back to reality. Ship management versus super yacht management. On the face of it, they're exactly the same thing. Yeah, you've got a technical team, you've got a finance department, you've got a crewing department, you've got all of these different parts to it. Ship management, it's about money. An owner buys a load of ships, he wants to make a lot of money out of them. So he wants everything cheap, he wants it efficient, and he wants it successful. And he wants it all the same. And just keep it all the same, and everybody's happy, everybody makes money, and everybody knows what everybody else is doing. It's a winner, if you get it right. So, super yachts, okay? So we've got, what, 23 yachts in management? They're all managed completely differently. Completely differently. And why is that? Each owner wants their yacht managed bespokely. So basically, what you're working with is an owner at the top, then he'll have his family office. So the family office will not just have the yachts, they'll probably have a couple of private jets that they're managing, a lot of villas, houses, and all sorts of other bits and pieces. The yacht is just one part of this. Now, they're also in the game of keeping their jobs. So they want to save a bit of money sometimes, so quite often what happens is we get approached, we'd like you to manage our super yacht. Brilliant, yeah, okay. But we just want you to do the accounts. Right, okay. So you don't want the finance, you don't want the crewing, you don't want the technical, you don't want ISM, you don't want compliance. No. Just the accounts. We'll get others, they'll physically give us the keys to the yacht and say, it's a mess, it's a headache. Just fix it and look after it. And make sure 15th of May, when the boss comes off his helicopter and gets in the car at Nice, it's ready for him just to go. That's all we ask. And the extremes of what we do within just one team are actually incredibly difficult to manage because each owner is wanting very, very specific things. So ship management, where you have a fleet of 14 tankers, each has got their ISM, each has got their systems, all managed the same way. You physically can't do it. Super yachts, because everything has got to be managed so differently. Sometimes the captain is also the owner's rep, which makes things very interesting because they're kind of your boss. Yet you've got to tell them when they're not doing their drills, or they're not doing their compliance, or this that isn't right, or that isn't right. You've got others who the boss is literally living on board, which can be difficult for everybody. Absolutely everybody. I mean, I don't blame somebody wanting to live on the super yacht. Why not? But yeah, it makes for interesting times. And then beyond that we talked about the finance, the accounts. Every yacht, absolutely every yacht we manage, the accounts is physically central to that. Crewing, again, it's a bit of a mix. One of the hardest ones, actually, one of the hardest boats we've got is the only aspect of it we actually physically manage is the ISM, is the compliance. Now, when you think about that, you're not doing technical, you're not doing crewing, you've got no sort of involvement with insurance. You're doing nothing, but somehow your Cayman Islands come in, audit you, and you've got to somehow pull it all together and show that they're compliant. And very easily, All it takes is the wrong captain to be on board, the wrong chief engineer, and says, well, actually, you know what, I'm not doing any of this. Then our reputation with Cayman Islands and our DOC, our document of compliance with Cayman Islands, is perilously close to being withdrawn. When we manage other yachts with Cayman, that would be a commercial disaster for us. And yeah, so do you get how different the whole thing goes? In ship management, you're in charge of your own destiny. Sometimes CBO management, it can be a little bit different. But would I have it any other way? Probably not. No. Okay, so let's delve a little bit deeper then. So you've got two types of yacht. All right, you've got private ownership and you've got commercial ownership. It's the difference. Private, you can pretty much do what you want, but it's going to cost you because it's expensive. You're going to have to pay for the boat probably and the VAT. No billionaire likes paying VAT. I can tell you that now. Refits, dry docks, you're going to have to pay the VAT. You're going to have to pay the VAT on all your store, all the other bits and pieces. Your crew, they don't even need to be certified. Okay. Other than the captain. And who drives compliance on private ownership? That's the insurers. The insurers are going to tell you what you can and can't do. And actually what we're finding now is insurers are getting their voice. Insurers are giving a little bit more, oh, hang on a second. Let's just rein this in a little bit. But yeah, I was just talking earlier. We sent out a fleet letter last week to all our fleets. We noticed recently in the last few months that drills are now turned into training exercises, desktop drills, quizzes, all these sorts of things. It's all brilliant stuff, but it's not a drill. It's not a drill. It's not everybody mustering, getting hoses out, doing rescues, getting BA kit on. So we had enough boats and realizing, oh, there's a bit of a sort of thing going on here. So we sent a fleet letter out, and most captains have been in touch with me, phoned me up and said, yeah, David, yeah, look, we've just got into this bad habit, and we're going to address this. And most of them, the last 2 weeks, have actually started smashing out drills and doing things again properly. I had one captain call me, and he said, David, he says, you've got a couple of new staff in the office, haven't you? I says, yeah. He says, they don't get it, do they? I says, don't get what? I said, well, we're private. We don't have to do any of this stuff. Can you just tell them to stop sending me these fleet letters about drills? I'm like, you've been in your rank for 15 years. You've been in the industry as long as I have. Private or not, you've got to do your drills, you know? I said, private boats catch fire just as easily as commercial boats, you know? And he's like, oh, right, okay, yeah, I'll do something about it. There's an industry kind of, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. There's an industry culture that we're trying to change. There's a big group of us attend super yacht forums every year, and we're trying to change and improve the safety culture throughout the fleet. But yeah, so anyway, again, I digress. Private ownership, commercial ownership. Now, here's a savvy thought. I buy a super yacht. I'm a busy man. I've got 15 businesses I've got to run. I've got this, that, and the other to do. I ain't using my super yachts 365 days of the year. What about renting it out? I'll charter it. And there's a lot of owners go down this road. And for me, I think it's a great idea. Advantages: everybody has to be qualified on board. Everybody has to be certified. And everybody can be held accountable for what they do. That's not just the crew, that's us as well. And there's no sort of pushback, like I mentioned before, people saying, we're private, this, that, and the other. The benefits, they can offset some of their income offset some of the OPEX. So, you know, if they have a good summer, they could probably save $1 million easily on the cost of the running of their boat. Means they get a free holiday. Well, that's the thing, they don't get a free holiday because they've got to pay as well. And they've got to pay the VAT. Did I mention billionaires say paying VAT? Yeah. Owners, savvy owners, to be honest, will pay commercial and have their boat commercial for all these different reasons. There are some tricky things to get around with it. There are some new owners coming into the business who don't kind of get that, they can't quite understand how it all works, and it does take time. We had one owner who called me last week, and he was on, David, he says, I've had this yacht 6 months. I says, yeah. He says, electricity bill. I said, what's all that about? He said, electricity bill. I says, what are you talking about? I've never been asked that before. He says, I'm getting electricity bills. Electricity bills. Oh, I says, shore power. He said, what's all that about? I says, I thought I had generators. Yeah, I says, when they go into the marina, I says, they come off the generator and they'll plug in the shore power. I says, and most marinas will tell them they've got to do that, you know? It's you can't just run your generators well, you know. Right, okay. And it was kind of interesting that this guy is a multi-billionaire, yet he sat there and he's wondering why it's cost his yacht $5,000 in electric bill for a month. I'm like, that's me looking under the sofa for that 5 pence that I got like 2 months ago. Very strange, but it takes all sorts, and maybe that's how he's multi-billionaire, is because he watches every single penny, and there's nothing wrong with that. It was just one of them odd conversations. Okay, I'll just put this table up just to kind of give you an idea of what's required, and sometimes it's easier to see it this way as a commercial yacht against what's required on a private yacht. And very quickly you can see private, you don't really need an awful lot. At the last Super Yacht Forum in the Netherlands before Christmas, the Red Ensign had a big workshop, and the big underwriters, London underwriters, challenged the Cayman Islands, the Red Ensign group. So that's Cayman Islands, Isle of Man, MCA. Why is everybody allowing this to happen? Because we all know every boat should be compliant with SOLAS or a form of SOLAS. You know, even the simple stuff. This is like all common sense stuff to all the commercial people here. You know, yeah, of course you should be, you know, construction, general, SOLAS, all of these sort of things, life-saving appliances, enough life jackets on board. It's fairly simple stuff, isn't it? But these are the rules. And the Cayman representative, the senior guy at Cayman, basically held his hand up and said, if we enforce this, we enforce private boats to comply with commercial, we'd lose all our business overnight. It would just go to another flag. Well, then the next question said, well, why can't all the flags get together and sort of say, look, there should be a minimum required? And that's when the conversation ended. So insurers essentially are driving the whole thing, certainly with the private sector. And the conversation came about because of lithium batteries. And we're going to talk about lithium batteries in a little while. Okay, so differences. Okay, yeah. I think, you know what it is? I think we've probably talked about most of this stuff. Yeah, I think we have actually. I mean, we've covered most of this. Just conscious of time and getting through it. True. Yeah, we've talked about this. The one thing that worth mentioning, and certainly for the cadets and the younger people in that here, if you get the opportunity of a lifetime to work on a super yacht and it's something you want to do, and it's private, check your crew contract, because all private boats are not required to be certified MLC. So your crew contract may be well away from what MLC states you should have as a minimum. And that includes benefits such as crew medical, minimum number of days leave every month, repatriation to your country of choice, all of these things, okay? So always, if you're on a private boat, there's nothing wrong with private boats. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be negative about it. There's some amazing private boats. We manage over half of our fleet is private. We manage them as if they are ISM. And that's, we just try and manage them all the same way. And we all encourage them continuously. 95% of our yachts, even though they're private, all of our crew work with MLC contracts. And I will try and draw the line with owners when they say, well, I don't want repatriation, I don't want crew medical, I don't want this, I don't want the other. Because that's not right, not in 2024, you know. But always be aware, you know, the seafarer's employment agreement won't mean the same as it does on a commercial boat. You go to the union, there's not really that much they can do. They can try and offer support, but there's so many cases in the industry, people have left high and dry, they've been kicked off a boat, private boat, no money to the name. They haven't even been paid the rest of their salary. Okay. Okay, and again, areas of operation, things change drastically between the US, EU, operating in Asia. So all of these things, you know, they all count. Okay, operating challenges, just very briefly, operating challenges. Okay. Minimum safe manning. Right, so I've used an example, 27-meter yacht. Okay, minimum safe manning, captain, chief engineer, yacht rating. Okay, 27-meter yacht can have 10 guests. Okay, you might have 4, you might have 5 berths. I've been kind in this example and I've said 5. Okay, so on top of this, you've got a chef and a stewardess. Right, boat's commercial. So not only have you got to run around after 10 guests, you've got tender runs, you've got garbage runs, you've got provisions runs, you've got all of the yacht to maintain, clean, tidy. You've got your routine maintenance, and then you've got all your paperwork and all the other bits and pieces that go with mini ISM. It's a massive job. Where we get stung, hours of rest. Hours of rest, massive problem. Because they've got to comply, everybody's got to comply. It's mandatory, and it's right. But the problem you're going to have is very difficult to achieve. It actually gets harder before it gets easier. So once you get beyond 67 meters, you've got more crew, you've got the opportunity to have a proper schedule of duties and try and manage things a little bit better. I don't know, is it any better? Yeah. Yeah. We got 2021, we got a non-conformity from Cayman during our DOC, compliance with hours of rest, and we restructured all of the schedule of duties, and we're continuously trying new things, trying to avoid it. I mean, there was one particular boat, there was some crazy stuff, like they were on charter and the chef decided he was going to do a deep clean of all of the fridge freezers. I mean, why? You know, it was like pre-charter. So when I was starting to look at pre-charter checklists and trying to sort of get people's head around what they need to do before the charter, if it's a 10-day charter, how much can they get away with before they need to go back again? Yeah, it's a tough industry in that respect. On the absolute positive side of it all, you're in probably one of the nicest locations in the world. You've finished your 10-day charter. And unlike a commercial ship where it's like, right, okay, lines up, on to our next port and next cargo, 9 times out of 10, you'll probably sit there for about 5 days. So you can hopefully get the chance of, if you've got a decent captain, you'll get some rest. You can go ashore and let your hair down and just relax a little bit. Yeah, crew accommodation is a challenge. Smaller boats is a challenge. And getting a hold of crew is a big problem nowadays. Since the pandemic in 2020, a lot of people left the industry. Realized it wasn't for them, and trying to replace those crews has been difficult. One of the big problems, and this is a British problem, this isn't a European problem, has been Brexit. So Brexit changed a lot of things for young people who are wanting to go and work on yachts, because generally what used to happen, if you didn't have experience, you do your STCWs, then you'd call it dock walking. So you go down to the south of France, spend your entire summer down there, and all you do every day, CVs, batch of CVs in your bag, you go to every boat, give them your CV, got any work, got any work, got any work, and you'd start getting work. You get like cash in hand work, so they call you a day worker. So you go on, you do a day's work, you come off, go back to your tent or wherever you were trying to save some money, and then you build up experience then. And then eventually one day you'd work on a boat and say, you know what, we really like you, and they keep you on. And then that's your first job. It's a lot harder to do that now, and it's a lot harder to get into the industry that way. And then second point, engineers. World's struggling for engineers at the moment. I don't know how many of you guys are doing engineering, how many are deck? Not sure. A bit of both. You're all engineers. So, well, ETOs, then you're basically God's gift as a super yacht role. So you can name your price in 5 years. You can, yeah. So you'll get your Aston Martin. The engineers will probably get a Porsche or something. Big shortage of engineers, particularly on the smaller boats. The problem with the smaller boats is they've generally got big engines, because billionaires like things big. So it's like, what's the biggest engine I can fit in this boat sort of idea? The problem with that is when they go commercial, that engineer needs to be certified and qualified. And that same engineer, that MTU 4000 series, that'll be on a 70 meter, is all of a sudden on a little 40 meter boat. And there'll be two of them, and you can barely get around them. But you need the same ticket. Now I know which boat I would rather be on. I'd be on the 70 meter, 80 meter, not the 40 meter, 30 meter. And that's simply because the conditions, your living conditions and everything are all almost so much smaller. So it's a tough area, but it's a good entry area level to get into as well. So if you do get your tickets and you fancy super yachts, you've got a good chance. You've got a reasonably good chance of getting a job on a 40 meter with your big ticket. But get your tickets first. That's my recommendation. Okay, how are we doing for time? All right. Okay. Safety. Kibo. You'll know Kibo. I hope. Do you know about Kibo? Okay. Fortunately, we've got the starboard side of the boat here, but it's actually the port side we should really be talking about. Average day on board at anchor off Majorca. Okay, a lot of guests on board, just private. A lot of guests on board, people coming around, fender runs, whatever else. One of the deckhands was told, right, we've had a guest complain about the rub rails on the starboard side, on the port side. I'm just going to point them out here. The rub rails are here and here. Okay. So he's given this job. They've showed him how to use the bosun's chair. They've given him the safety lead. Right, attach yourself onto this fender hook. Now, those that don't do fender hooks, okay, on super yachts, you've got loads of fenders down both sides when you're coming in port. And basically, they're just like giant saddles, like horse saddles, except they're designed for holding fenders. So they sit over the bulwark, and then you drop the fenders, and the fenders sit off these things. They told them, right, okay, sit off the fender, and we'll shuffle you along, and we want you to clean the stainless rub rails. Okay, yes, I'll do that. No problem. So they filled out a permit to work. off they went. Third officer was observing at first. So the third officer was watching them, supervising. Chief officer shouts to the third officer, "Tender run ashore, you're next." Right, okay, but you've got the deckhand down in the water. Right, I'll supervise the deckhand. We've got to get these guests ashore on the tender. They've been waiting ages. Okay, so off he pops. He's got chief officer is on the radio, this, that, and the other. So chief back and forward, not there all the time. The deckhand is trying to shuffle himself down now. He's on his own with a bucket of tools, polishing, cleaning, whatever else. CCTV doesn't cover that area. Super yachts rely a lot on CCTV. Next thing you know, he's in the water. The fender cooks come off, and this is a big, heavy lump of, so it's like, how do I describe it? It's a metal, but it's wrapped in foam and leather, and it all looks fancy and chrome and nice. So they're quite heavy things. So that's dropped in the water. He's tethered to it. He's also got a bucket with him. He hasn't got a life jacket on. He's under the water, but he's a big fit lad and he's treading water and he's trying to move out. Chief officer comes back, realizes, shit, right, okay, let's get to the swim platform and then we'll get you out of the water. So she goes to the swim platform, stands there. By the time she gets to the swim platform, it's gone, disappeared, completely gone. The captain gets the scuba gear on, dives down, he's on the bottom, he's on the seabed. So they drag him out, resuscitate him, get him ashore, he dies in hospital. Okay. Absolute. This accident happened, what? It's a few years ago now, but I still like talking about it because of the failures that we're going to discuss next. Okay. When they investigated, what went wrong? Okay, you know this one. He lost his footing, and that was it. He ended up in the water. Okay. First mistake. He's in the water. The chief officer sees him in the water. Didn't throw the life buoy. Okay. Didn't throw the life buoy. She thought it was quicker to run aft and try and come round and get him. Okay. The yacht was private, but they were following a voluntary ISM system, which leads me to believe they were certified under commercial voluntary, okay, which means you could flip. So you could run private, but you could flip to commercial for charters. They had instructions, they had ISM, they had procedures and instructions for how to do this. Classic, they didn't follow it, okay? He didn't have a life jacket on. Worse than that, he wasn't even involved in the permit to work or anything. It wasn't discussed with him. The risk assessment wasn't, none of this. He was just told, you're going to the bosun chair, you're going down there, you're cleaning. Okay. Lack of supervision. Catalogue of errors. Catalogue of errors. What scares me is this could happen again and again and again. And that's why we try and run all the boats, regardless commercial or private, as if they're commercial, and try and instill on them about risk assessments, permits to work, supervision, all these things, procedures. Look, you've got a book full of, you follow the procedure, talk about it. Yeah. Kibo, tragic. Okay, I thought to cheer things up. Literally, that was the name of the boat, M2D. Yeah, you get these every year. Drownings, common. Why did that happen? Passage planning. There's lots of reasons why the passage planning isn't done, and you can't be too hard on the captains or the mates. This is what 40-meter boats, so they probably haven't even done a passage plan on here. But passage plans, things change. You get guests on board. They're like, right, this is rubbish here. We want to go to that bay over there where all the other boats are. It looks more fun around there. And like, the captain or the mate isn't going to stand there then and say, right, well, give me an hour. I'm just going to do another passage plan. They're just going to go. They're just going to go and chance it because that's what the guests say. worst experience, or worst one I've heard. We've all seen The Wolf of Wall Street, right? So the owner's there. He's there with all of his male pals. We're all on some deck, all having a good drink. This is amazing. This is great. Oh, what a boat and all the rest. How fast does it go? The captain is on the flybridge there with them, keeping an eye on what's going on. And he's like, it's not really a great place to be doing that. The owner says, get out of the seat. I'm going to show me mates how fast this boat goes. Next thing, it's on a rock.
So do you think the captain is STW qualified? Or maybe on the NCA?
Yeah. Well, that depends. That depends. Because if it's private, he may not be. Unless the insurers have stipulated the minimum requirements for the captain. But there's boats out there that are owner drivers, we call them, owner captains. There's another strange rule, now you brought that up, which is even more quirky. You can go Belgian flag. Okay? Now, Belgian flag's an interesting one because they don't comply with the International Tonnage Register, which means certification isn't essentially a requirement. So I did a sea trial on a 34-meter AV1. Was it AV100? 30-odd meter? That had water jets. That could do 50 knots. That was a killing machine. And I was absolutely terrified doing a pre-purchase inspection on that thing, especially when the captain told me, oh, you should keep Belgian flag. I said, why is that? He says, because I can drive it with me powerboat level 2. And I'm like, oh, hang on a second. I'm just going to grab something with a life jacket. That was a 34-meter super yacht. Powerboat level 2. Oh, 50 knots. You know, you're going that fast that you're looking at things on the radar plotter and they're actually there before you pick them up on the... Yeah. Okay, Vixit, another one. That was a big case, but we'll skip on from that because I want to talk quickly about tombstoning. Yes, you go on TikTok, Facebook, all these sort of things. You see everybody doing this. Great fun, amazing. Until somebody dies, and somebody did die not so long ago, just last year. They'd had a boat had a really big charter, really successful charter. Everything had gone really well. Guests had all left. Captain said, right, okay, yeah, right, let's bit of downtime. What we'll do is we'll go out, we'll go to anchor, we'll get the boats out, and we'll just have an afternoon swimming, just relax and all the rest of it. And they did pretty much everything right. I had the rescue boat out, monitoring, when people were swimming. So somebody was in the rescue boat monitoring everything was going. Two of the crew decided they were going to jump from the flybridge. It was about a 17, 18 meter drop. First person dropped, probably about that sort of height. First person dropped, no bother, great, excellent. Second person decided to do a backflip, went in the water, hit the water wrong, and that was the end of them. There was a big safety campaign that's just gone out. I'm sure it was Cayman or Isle of Man recently. Again, trying to educate the dangers of tombstoning. Kill cords. We've all seen these, haven't we? Always use them. Always use them, because too many times people don't use them. And if you don't kill a fellow jet skier or tender driver, you're going to probably decapitate somebody who's sitting on the beach. Because when you're, particularly the jet skis, the high-powered jet skis, these massive Sea-Doos, 1.3, 1.4s, you fall off and you haven't got one of these on, that thing's going to keep going until it runs out of petrol. And the devastation was, most of these cases don't really get reported very well. It was 2 tenders in Turkey, and one of the boats we managed, the captain took some photographs actually just after it had happened. We just happened to be just right next to where it happened. And two tenders, it was head-on collision. But the pair of the tenders, by chance, they were both messing around. They'd left the con almost at identical times to mess around to do something, to get a drink out of the fridge. I think it was one of them for the guests, and another one was trying to get a rope in that was dragging. Didn't have the kill cord on, obviously, because they were too busy. Didn't see each other and bang. Yeah. And it's such a cheap thing to have, like things cost about £10. Okay, right. Lithium batteries. It's a big problem. It's a big problem in the industry. Over 100 watts, that's what everybody's talking about. Over 100 watts. You've got a mountain of different kind of toys that use these things, okay? I'll just go to the next slide. You've got C-bobs, you've got these flight boards, you've got all this stuff, and it's all lithium batteries. Older boats will have one garage on board, so everything will be in the garage at the back. So you'll have like the tender in there, you'll have the jet skis in there, you have all the inflatable kit, life jackets, and now they're squeezing C-bobs in there and flight boards and all the other stuff, and petrol's in there as well, which makes for an interesting combination of things. And it's a big industry problem. Flag are continuously looking at it. They're looking at it in terms of keels laid after 2024. What about all the other boats? It's like, you know, we're building procedures and things and do's and don'ts for these things. But again, it's another thing that scares me. One of these flight boards, okay. So I was told this story about 2 weeks ago. Flight boards were out with guests. One of them, battery went flat when they were out there. So rescue boat was out, towed them back, no problem. Got it to the swim platform. They had spare batteries. Changed the battery over. Okay, took the old battery out. Now, how the dead battery ended up in the garage, I'm not sure. That bit of the story wasn't clear. Whether it was thrown or it was laid. I suspect it may have been thrown. Anyway, changed the battery, guests back out, having an amazing time. Meanwhile, in the garage, fire alarm starts going off. This dead battery, it's not connected to anything, just self-combusted. And that really scared me because obviously we're all aware of lithium batteries when charging them and not overcharging them. But I have one that's physically dead just to kind of spontaneously combust. I suspect probably more than likely it had been thrown in there and it had damaged the cells, and that would probably start the reaction. But yeah. So it's this is a kind of development story, really. Lots of boats catching fire. So yeah, be very, very wary. Very, very wary. Okay. A little bit of a plug for myself. So this is Marine Insights. We produce this remote monitoring software that can plug into any alarm monitoring system on board any vessel, and it gives us a lot of data, a lot of good data. We've managed to stop quite a few things on boats in the time it's been installed. Long term, we're implementing machine learning and AI, so we can start to predict accurately when things are going to go wrong, long before they do. But interestingly, it's picked up a load of things that we never thought about. One was fuel theft, which was kind of strange. I think the owners kind of suspected something was up when they approached me to install the system. So we installed it. Within about 2 months, owner called me. So David, he says, I'll not do the accent, I'm terrible at accents, I'll just... David, he says, I've just got the bunker receipts from Thailand, from the last bunker. He says, how much was actually bunkered according to the system? And I said, okay, let's have a look in there. Oh yeah, it was about 6,000 litres. He says, I've got a bill here for 14,000 litres. I'm like, right, that's odd. So I said, well, there might be some weird thing going on. Let's just give it one more go. Let's wait until he bunkers next, but we're kind of aware, we're a little bit prepared. Exactly the same thing happened. So phoned the chief engineer and says, we've got a problem here. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, bunkering. There's a massive discrepancy. And he's like, how do you mean? Well, I says, the bunker receipts. I says, look, I says, are you going to tell me what's going on? And he essentially fell on his sword and said, yeah, I'm sorry. He says, I've been doing it for ages. He says, I've just been making up my money. He says the owners weren't the best payers, and yeah. And basically he had a little scheme going with a bunker supplier, write it out for 14 and we'll split the cost. It's mind boggles. Not as much fun, but we had battery sensors. So this was a new build. It'd been out in the water for about 2 months after delivery. Main engine start batteries. All of a sudden, the trajectory started going right the way up. We got an alert off our system, phoned the chief engineer straight away. Now, on yachts, generally, depending on the system you've got, a lot of yachts only have the physical numbers that you can see on the day, and then they'll log the numbers and all the rest of it, and they don't have the trending. So to have the trending, you can physically see that upward trajectory. Called him straight away. He's like, oh, shit, right, okay, let's. And right enough, there was an issue with the charging system. Not unusual on a new build. Things go wrong. Things go wrong. They managed to avert a big problem there. Yeah, so that's my system. So it's got tons of benefits, absolutely masses of benefits, and we're just really sort of learning what it's actually capable of ourselves since we started working with it and got it set up. And there's new things come out every day. Emergency response, hadn't really even thought about that. So when you're set up in the emergency response room ashore, you can log straight in without physically having to ask the captain hundreds of questions, which is absolutely the worst part of emergency response, is having to get on the phone every 10 minutes to the captain every 15 minutes just to get updates and find out what's going on. When you can log in and you can basically see everything that's going on yourself, you can see the emergency generators going on, you can see the fire pump, you can see all these different things that are going on. And it really cuts down on those communications. Okay, to my favorite bit, new builds. I spent a lot of time in Italy with new builds. So those that don't really know, Lursen at the top, Lursen fed ship are probably about the biggest, the best. The best quality yacht is that top row. Novice Group through Lursen. Then your Royal Houseman, Fairman, Game Changer, was it the name one? Heeson, these are the Dutch. Then you move to the Italian yards, San Lorenzo Benetti. I spent a lot of time at these yards. Mangusta, these are the fast killer machines. These are generally water jet things that go about 50 knots. And then you've got the Sunseeker and Princess yachts. These are GRP. Okay. Difference between GRP and steel. You can get a 40-meter super yacht in 12 months if you go with JRP. Okay. Go with steel, you've got 3 to 4 years, depending on the build. Huge difference. So a lot of people new to the industry will simply go, I'll get a 131 Sunseeker, 40-meter, absolutely cracking, lovely, very nice boat. Order that. I'll have that in 12 months, and they'll order that. Then they'll order that 50, 60-meter steel boat on top. So it starts out the mold and then works all the way through. Okay, and I've got some finished. And then this is 12 months. So this was the project I managed through. Amazing. You've seen out of place Monaco, 40-meter, very, very grand, very nice yacht. But this was actually the yacht. You've just reminded. This is the yacht that's went for the big MTUs. He says, David, he says the biggest ones you can fit in there. Get them in. Right, okay, 16 valve MTU 4000s. We'll get them in. We'll just about squeeze them in. Okay, so this thing potentially could do 30 knots. Interior designer comes along. Spoke to Madame, which is what we normally call the boss's wife, and sells her this lighting system. Right? That ain't going to work at 30 knots. That's going to shake into a billion bits. So he ended up with massive engines and he was restricted to 16 knots. Yachts. Okay. Go on all sides. Okay, so moving on to steel. So this is San Lorenzo. Interesting. So quite interesting sort of fabrication procedure of these things. So you've got steel and then you've got aluminium. So you end up with these bimetallic strips in between, right the way through. Obviously, to insulate the aluminium from the steel through the process. And that's probably one of the hardest bits you've got to police to make sure that they do that. Because you'll get some guards, it's the Friday afternoon syndrome. Oh, bollocks, nobody will know. I'll just put a bit of steel in there and we'll do. Yeah, so that's got to be heavily policed. Yeah, that's swimming pool, infinity pools, a big thing. Garage doors that we were talking about. Okay, and then quickly moving on to now, this gentleman here will know all about these sort of pictures from the paint sort of side of things. Fairing. These steel boats get their beautiful looks because they're literally full of what you would call at home plaster, essentially plaster, but call it fairing, and it's thicker, but essentially it does the same job. So it gets rid of all of those weld marks and all, it makes all these beautiful smooth lines that make the super yacht look the way it do when it's finished. And it's a very, very difficult process. That's why the process does take 3 to 4 years, because this is a massive job. It's actually, to give you an example. What? So here, this picture here, that's the fairing that's been plastered on. Okay. This has been dyed, so this is ready for sanding. And then this is the finished fairing there. So that's kind of a nice little picture of the process. And you get guys on massive long boards, 2 or 3 guys, and basically just going up and down like this for hours and hours on end, sanding. It's very therapeutic to watch. I wouldn't want to do it. Okay, interior is a massive job on a super yacht, and you're dealing with some very, very expensive materials. Yeah, so everywhere there's protection, there's covering, and you literally even in the yard, you're kind of reluctant to touch anything because you're not sure if is that the finished material or yeah. And there you go, and that's actually the same yacht as I showed you the pictures for. So you can see the smooth lines and the finish on the yacht and the gloss paintwork at the end. Yeah, these can be beautiful machines. Last slide, and then we're done. There's a little gap. They're trying to close the gap in the industry. It's the sub 500. Now, remember we were talking earlier, mentioned about ISM, mini ISM. So there's plus 500s, a full ISM. So you've got to comply with everything. Mini ISM, you don't need a yacht management company with a document of compliance or any of that. So you can get away with a lot more. Problem is people want all of that, yet they want a big 50-meter yacht. So how do you do it? This is how they do it. They create beach clubs. Now they've stopped this rule now. They've stopped it. They've changed the rule. Massive wet areas. So this isn't classed as part of the boat. This is just basically part of the essentially the sea, the external areas. So it doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't fall into the gross tonnage. To be honest, it's a pretty smart idea, pretty dangerous idea, especially when the door falls off. Yeah, but you know they've changed this rule now. I thought it was yeah, and there was one more case that I was involved with, and it was even weirder. It was this is fairly normal. So there was 2 decks, so it had main salon. I'm not telling you anything about the boat or where it was built either, actually, because this has been recorded and I don't want any come back on me. It had an upper deck as well. I was on the upper deck, and the upper deck's like a sun deck. It's all like open, but it's got a big canopy over it and everything else. And I'm like, okay, it's a bit unusual design. I went back like, oh, it was about a month later. Okay, just before delivery, and again the same. Everything was just about done. Great, and then we got everything set up for delivery. And then I returned about after delivery, class, all certificates and that were all ready. So I was just going back to see if they're ready for the first guest trip. And I goes back and I walks down the arena, I completely misses the boat. I'm like, where's the boat gone? Like, so it walks back again. Right, oh, that's the name, but that doesn't look like the boat. Very odd, like. So I'm looking up. The sun deck's disappeared. They've put windows in. They put windows in the upper deck. So from being an open deck, it's now an upper salon. I'm like, really? I said, well, nobody said anything so far. I says, when class come back to do their annual surveys, somebody might just pick up on that. But I thought it was a funny story. I don't know how it works with the GM mind, but there you go.